at biome last time. We will continue from biome. So this is a biome pyramid. As you can see, from here to here we are moving from hot to cold, right? What is this? This is basically weather, and we are moving from wet to dry. So let's say we are seeing there is hot, there is in hot we have hot and wet, we have rainforest. Hot and a little less wet, we have tropical seasonal forest. It's starting to get dry, it's scrubland, savanna, desert. Same for hot and a little wet, we have deciduous forest, little. So basically as you go up, the temperature is decreasing, right? As you go right in here, the rainfall is decreasing. Alright, so these are some examples of biomes with different weather patterns. Now we are going to biosphere. Biosphere is a part of Earth where life can exist. So it is basically parts of Earth where life can exist, right? Which means which help life to exist. It represents a highly integrated and interacting zone comprising of atmosphere, hydrosphere and lithosphere. All three are needed in most scenarios. Biosphere is approximately 20 kilometers thick. Most of life occurs between 500 below the surface of the ocean and 6 kilometers above the sea level. So means that most of life is existing at the sea level, 500 meters up till 500 meters below the sea, and up till 6 kilometers above the sea level. Alright, this is the sea level. Now this is the biosphere. This is the hydrosphere. You can see there are phases here. There is the air, atmosphere, birds are flying. These are some terrestrial animals. This is fossils. Alright. So all three together, atmosphere, lithosphere and hydrosphere, form the biosphere. Alright. What is a habitat? Habitat is basically where an organism or a community of organisms lives. It includes all living and non-living factors or conditions of the surrounding environment. Alright. So basically let's say a habitat for monkeys. What it must contain? It must contain trees. Trees must have fruits and all. Monkeys will feed on small bugs also. Maybe an occasional mammal like rat. So all these are needed. This is abiotic, this is biotic factors. So these are all form the monkey's habitat. All of this is basically what it is, the monkey's habitat. What it needs. A microhabitat is conditions. A microhabitat is term for conditions and organisms in the immediate vicinity of the plant and animal. So basically if it is for a plant, let's say, so what soil conditions it is requiring, right? What wind is interacting, what insects are interacting directly with it, is its microhabitat. And habitat is basically everything that surrounds it and allows it to live a well lifestyle. Microhabitat example, there is a log which is a piece of wood rotting in a forest. There is moss on it, a lot of saprophytes must be on it, insects on it which are feeding. So it is a micro habitat. What is a niche? A niche refers to a unique role or position of species within an ecosystem. Alright. What is the unique role? Whenever you use niche colloquially also, it means unique, right? What is your speciality is your niche. So here niche refers to unique role or position of a species within an ecosystem, including the biological and physical conditions it requires to survive and reproduce. It can be described by set of environmental conditions such as temperature, humidity. It can be described by specific set of environmental conditions such as temperature, humidity, light, soil type, and food availability that a species needs to survive. Alright, is its niche. What is it? It is a unique role and position of a species in an ecosystem, which includes its physical and biological conditions that it requires to survive and reproduce. It must be temperature, right? Some animals can live in certain temperatures, some plants can thrive in some certain temperatures and will die in certain temperatures. Humidity is required and not required in some cases. In rainforests, there is always high humidity, so those plants need high humidity environments to grow. Light, how much light is falling on the plant. Some plants need low light, some plants need more light. Soil type, acidic soil, basic soil, what minerals are required for that particular plant to grow or that organism to survive in the soil. Food availability, what type of food is available, right? So all this comes under niche. The niche of an organism and its interaction is determined whether it stands where it stands, right? Niche determines where it stands in the ecological structure of the ecosystem. So producers, consumers or decomposers. So what is the difference between habitat and niche? Habitat is basically the physical space. Niche is the functional space. Alright. It is the physical space. So for monkeys it was trees. Right. What type of weather conditions, what type of all that. For functional space it is what organisms it needs to eat. Comes under niche. Where it gets its resources, it needs to survive. So habitat and niche example. Let's say there are few insects on a tree. There are birds, there are fruit on the tree. Fruit falls, birds will feed here. Bird 2 is woodpecking, there is also insects here. And bird 3, food is here. So what is the habitat? The habitat is tree. Right, the habitat is the tree. But what is the niche? For one it is bottom, for other is trunk, and other it is branch. Alright, so where is it getting everything that is important to it for to reproduce and survive? Next we have type of niches. There is a habitat niche, that is the physical area in the habitat that the species occupies. There is a trophic niche, where trophic level it has multidimensional, is fundamental niche and limiting factors. Fundamental niche is where an organism could exist without ecological interactions. Alright, population exists here in presence of interactions and competition. Alright, niche types. Let's say yellow bird inhabits upper regions of a tree, red bird inhabits middle portions of the tree, and blue bird inhabits trunk and lower branches. Alright, this is the fundamental niche. The fundamental niche is the whole tree. Alright, where it can exist independently. This is the whole tree. But what is the realized niche? It is the niche it is actually occupying. Alright, what is niche overlap? If two organisms have the same niche, alright, let's say two organisms have the same niche, which means the same requirements, then there will always be an increased competition and less chance of survival for so, because more organisms are fighting for the same thing. What is Gauss's law? Gauss law is competitive exclusion principle. Competition in the case of two species will lead to exclusion of one from the niche, which means that if two species are fighting for the same niche, if two species are competing for the same niche, let's say competing for the same niche, then one will be excluded, or you can say thrown out or out competed. Alright, so it will always lead to the survival of only one species if there is a total niche overlap. Niche overlap describes a situation in which co-occurring species share parts of their niche space with each other. Okay, overlapping niches may lead to competitive exclusion. Two species which compete for the same limited resources cannot coexist at constant population values, which means that if two species A and B are competing, let's say they began with 100 pieces, right? two species are competing for the same niche and they have the same population in the beginning, let's say 100 of each. Eventually what will happen, that one of the species will gain more population and the other will get reduced population until one species is totally, let's say one of the species will totally, what is it called, one species will totally overtake the other, okay, and this one will be excluded. Alright, it cannot coexist at constant population values. Niche overlap is reduced by resource partitioning. It is simple. So let's say there was a house, okay, you and your brother are inheriting the house, but what is your brother doing? That one of the brother is taking the entire house for himself. Alright, which is wiping one, or the other can file a case and take the house for himself. So what can we do in such a situation? We will divide, okay, let's not do that, let's do a 50-50 so that there is no bad blood. So that is what resource partitioning in nature is. What happens, that process of moving things around in order to satisfy niche to an appropriate level. Okay, let's say this is a niche overlap. What happens? Generally species with narrow niche. Region of niche overlap, generally species with broad niche. Some will have broader niche, some will have a smaller niche. This is the niche separation and there is a niche overlap. We will see niche overlap or competitive exclusion over here. All these words are from the same finch family, right? Now you will see how it happens, that how is niche divided amongst, how are sub niches created from within the niche. First of all, there is a large ground fringe. What does it do? All of these have crushing bills, which means they are used to crush. Do you understand what could crushing mean, right? It is usually used to eat seeds. So these also eat seed, these also eat seed, these also eat seed, these also eat seed, and these eat cactus. These are all ground fringes. So all these have the niche on ground, right? The feeding habit of this one differs from all the others. These three have probing bills, right? Probing, what is probing? It's basically getting inside something, which means they will be better eaters in terms of getting into something and taking something out, for example insects. But this one uses for cactus. These are all probing bills. This is the wobbler finch, right? These are all tree finches living upon the tree. This has a parrot-like beak, it's a fruit eater. Grasping bills, it has an insect eater. And probing bill, woodpecker finch. Alright, so we are seeing resource partitioning in some ways. Here we have another example of resource partitioning to avoid over competition. Plovers find food directly from sand. Oyster catchers will find oysters from a little deeper in the sand. Avocets will just hunt where the sea is beginning. Ducks hunt a little deeper, and flamingos you will find them in the middle of the lake, right? Flamingos hunt in deeper waters as compared to ducks. Duck hunt in deeper waters as compared to avocets. Oyster catchers hunt in deeper soil, and flyovers will find food that is lying upon the soil, right? So they have more or less the same niche, a lake and a water body and soil, but they have divided the resources amongst them in such a way that there is less overlap. Ecotone. What is ecotone? Ecotone is basically a zone of junction. What is a junction? A junction is anything that joins two places is a junction. Joins two places is a junction. So between two or more diverse ecosystems. Alright. So there is what are such areas have richness in biodiversity due to edge effect. Alright, what is an ecotone? Example, it is marshlands, right? What are marshlands? Trees, You have a saline environment. Here there is a sea, there is a forest, there is some water. So what happens? This water becomes brackish water, right? Where the sea and forest is meeting. We see marshlands, we see mangrove forests here. In dry and wet ecosystems, we see marshlands. Let's say if there is a lake in a forest, and it has created, the soil is a little wet, becomes a marshlands. Grasslands have desert and forest. Estuaries have salt water and fresh water in between, which makes brackish water, and we have a lot of brackish water species. Fish that can survive in both normal waters and brackish water, like the Scatophagus argus, which is a native species of India. We also have Nandus nandus, which is a brackish water species. It might help. In marshlands we find different type of species. In mangrove forest we find crocodiles also. We find mangrove trees which have adaptations to grow in such environment. Ecotones is a transitional region between two adjacent ecosystems that contain some of the species and characteristics of each one, right? This is an aquatic ecosystem. There are fish, there is ducks, and this is a land ecosystem. So a turtle is basically acting as, it is in the transitional ecosystem. A turtle can flourish both in land and in water. Same with the frog, it flourishes both in land and in the water. As you might know, tadpoles, frogs give egg in the water. Tadpoles are primarily aquatic, and then they grow limbs and they also become terrestrial. So unique species with unique characteristics are born and supported by ecotones. That is what ecotones is categorized by uniqueness of organisms. It is also a zone of tension. How is it a zone of tension? Because it is an overlap of two types of ecosystems, so there must be a zone of tension, so that it is linear, as it shows progressive increase in species composition, right? It is linear. How? What does it mean linear? You will find terrestrial species here, right? As you go here, terrestrial species will lessen. As you go here, terrestrial species will lessen, and then aquatic species will grow from here. If you come from here to here, aquatic species keep lessening, so it is linear. A well-developed ecotone contains some organisms which are entirely different. If the ecotone is well developed and well established, right, it will always have organisms that are entirely different from the adjoining communities, like frogs and turtles, which we see. What are some other examples of ecotones? There are marine animals that release limestone. This limestone in marine environment leads to edge effect and ecotone presence. Coral reefs, as we know, help a lot of other have formed symbiotic relationship with a lot of other fishes, so they create a new type of ecotone within the marine ecosystem. What is wetland? Submerged in water, midway between lakes and land and lakes, therefore have much higher biodiversity. Ramsar is very important. All Ramsar sites you need to know. Edge effect. What is edge effect? We read the term edge effect a lot of times. Now we'll know what it is. It refers to changes in population that occurs at the boundary of two habitats. Alright. Sometimes the number of species and population density of some of the species in ecotone is much greater than the either community. This leads to edge effect, which means that species in the ecotone, sometimes some particular species, a unique species, let's say there is a, this is one ecosystem 1, that is, this is another ecosystem 2, and this is ecotone, right? So what is happening? That there must be some species A, some species B. Now in the ecotone there might be a species C that has a larger population density than either, so that is called the edge effect, which means a unique species has more population than species from either of the other sides. Species adapted to survive in edge effect are called ecotypes. Alright. Ecotones, ecotypes, remember. Edge effect, let's see. These are the plains. These are foothills. Wait, let me change my pen color so you realize what I am drawing instead of and what has already been written. Okay, so these are plains and these are foothills. These are mountains. Foothills are basically where the plain means the mountain. Example is Terai Himalayan. Terai has a lot of biodiversity. Terai is equal to high diversity. Then there is a Dhundwa National Park in UP, which has tiger and rhinoceros. This is a mountain. So this is also edge effect. Ecotype. An ecotype is a population that differs genetically from other population of the same species because locations have selected certain unique physiological or morphological characteristics. Ecotype, what can ecotype be described as? It is also different from the same species, right? So let's say an example of a Royal Bengal tiger. Royal Bengal tiger can drink salt water, which other species of tigers cannot, because it has adapted to the mangrove. There is a Kharai camel in Gujarat. There is the Indian rhinoceros. All of these are ecotypes. They have adapted to survive in an ecotone, regardless of being the same species. Now we have ecotype. Another example: beach ecotype is prostrate habit with pubescent leaves. Mountain is ecotype erect, shrub with hairless leaves, hybrid leaves. Beach ecotype, mountain ecotype. Now productivity, energy flow, decomposition. Productivity, what we read already, is biomass production, rate of biomass production. Energy flow is sequential flow. Decomposition is breakdown of dead organic material. Right. We move on to trophic levels. A trophic level is representation of energy flow in a system, right? What is it? It is a representation of energy flowing in a system. It is the position it occupies in a food chain is also a trophic level, right? Trophic level interactions involve three concepts: food chain, food web, and ecological pyramids. Deals how members of an ecosystem are connected based on nutritional needs also. So energy in an ecosystem. Plants absorb 1% only of all sunlight that they receive. Photosynthetic organisms make 170 billion metric tons of food each year. Alright, there are two processes: photosynthesis and respiration. Now, autotrophs. Auto means myself, right? Auto means myself, and trophs means eating. So it means trophs also means food, right? So autotrophs are basically I make my own food. Primary producers are basically green plants, such as, and there are certain bacteria and algae also. They synthesize carbohydrates from simple inorganic raw materials like carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight. This is the definition of photosynthesis. Simple inorganic raw materials like carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight by process of photosynthesis. I will not say this is carbon dioxide is not an inorganic raw material, so remember that. But yeah, here organic does not mean the same way we mean in organic chemistry. Here I think it means natural. So carbohydrates are made, they make it for themselves and supply indirectly to other non-producers. Why do any plants make fruits? It is basically a storage of energy. In terrestrial ecosystems, producers are basically herbaceous and woody plants. In aquatic, there are various species of microscopic algae. Primary producers, autotrophs, producers such as phototrophs or chemotrophs. Phototrophs, organisms that perform photosynthesis, contain chlorophyll, carbon dioxide. Yes, producers are called phototrophs or chemotrophs. Photo means light, right? They made food with light. Chemotrophs make food with chemicals. Organisms that perform photosynthesis contain chlorophyll. So carbon dioxide, water, sunlight gives sugar and oxygen. Chemotrophs do chemical reactions to obtain their food like sulfur bacteria called thiobacillus. Carbon dioxide plus water plus hydrogen sulfide. So this is new. Remember this. Plus oxygen also gives carbohydrates plus sulfuric acid. So primary producers autotrophs. Autotrophs make their own food for energy, use photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. Remember, not just write photosynthesis. Consumers eat other organisms to get protein and energy. There's sun is giving energy to the grass is doing photosynthesis, forming carbohydrates. Grass is eaten by grasshopper, so carbohydrates are absorbed by grasshopper, and toad eats grasshopper, thereby gaining protein and energy in the form of carbohydrate. There are plants, some bacteria, algae, animals, most bacteria and fungi. Alright. Heterotrophs. Consumers are incapable of producing their own food. Photosynthesis. Isn't that true? That consumers cannot make their own food. They depend on organic food derived from plants, animals or both. Consumers can be divided into two broad groups. There is micro and there is macro. So consumers divided into two groups, micro and macro. We'll see this quickly and then we'll take a break. There's tertiary consumers, there's secondary consumers, there's primary consumers, and there's primary consumers. Primary producers. Primary producers are creating the food, right? The initial food. Then it is being consumed by grasshopper and krill. Secondary consumers will eat the primary consumers, and tertiary consumers will eat the secondary consumers. That is how the food chain works. We will continue from slide 45 after 5 minutes. So all of you take a break. We will be continuing in 5 minutes.